Welcome guys to the Fabled Fluffle deck concept. So we're going to look at some synchros and fusions in this deck. For the Fabled monsters, we have Chawa. During your main phase, you can discard one Fabled monster and special summon this card from your hand. Cerebel, if this card is discarded to the graveyard, special summon it. Chorus, if this card is discarded to the graveyard, special summon any Fabled level 4 or lower monster from your graveyard back to your field, except it can't be itself. Or technically the Chorus you just discarded, but it can be a second Chorus if you had one. The Fabled Gangashia. So this card, when it's discarded to the graveyard, you can special summon it. However, if it's special summoned this way, remove it from play when it leaves the field. Grimrow. If you control a Fabled monster, you can discard this card from your hand to the graveyard to add a Fabled monster from your deck to your hand. Fabled Unicorn. Level 4 synchro monster. Requires a Fabled tuner monster, one or more non-tuner monsters. So it's not too hard to get out in this deck. While you and your opponent have the same number of cards in hand, negate this activation of spells, traps, and monster effects activated by your opponent and destroy them. So that's a really powerful effect because that's a perma-stun if you have the same number of cards. It's not hard to do on your own turn, but during your opponent's turn it might be more difficult, but it still makes it so that they have to play more cautiously because if they have the same number of cards, bam, they can't do anything. Fabled Ragin, usually the synchro monster you go for in this deck. Fabled Tuner, one or more non-tuner monsters. When this card is synchro summoned, if you have one or less card in your hand, draw until you have two cards in your hand. So basically, it's like a mini card of demise sort of thing. You try to get rid of your hand, then just synchro on up on Ragin, and then you just draw a bunch of cards. For the Fluffles, we have Fluffal Cat. If this card is sent to the graveyard as a fusion material for a fusion summon, you get to target one polymerization in your graveyard, add it back to your hand. You can activate this effect once per turn. Fluffal Dog, level 4. When this card is normal summoned or special summoned from the hand, you get to add one Edge Imp Sabers monster or one Fluffle monster from your deck to your hand. You can activate this effect once per turn as well. Fluffal Bear. You can discard this card from your hand to the graveyard to set one toy vendor directly from your deck to your side of field. You can activate this effect once per turn. So that's the main effect of Fluffal Bear. Fluffal Owl. When this card is normal or special summoned from the hand, you get to add one polymerization from your deck to your hand, or you can use it, pay 500 life points to use it as a fusion, contact fusion monster sort of thing without polymerization. You can only activate one effect once per turn and only that turn, so you gotta pick whichever effect you wanted to use. Fluffal Wings. If this card's in the graveyard while you control a toy vendor, you get to banish this card, Fluffal Wings, and another Fluffal monster to draw a card. Then you can send the toy vendor to draw another card, and yeah, lots of pluses with Fluffal Wings. Edge Imp Sabers. If this card's in your graveyard, you can place one card from your hand to the top of your deck to special summon it. This is basically like a Plague Spear zombie, except it does not banish itself. You can only activate this effect once per turn. We also need polymerization to fuse our Fluffle monsters together, as well as we need Frightful Fusion for the Miracle plays, because it's kind of like Miracle Fusion for heroes, except this is for Fluffles. So you can banish fusion materials from your graveyard and your field to fusion summon Frightful Fusion monsters, so that's really nice. We got Frightful Tiger as a fusion monster. Edge Imp Sabers plus one or more Fluffle monsters. When this card's fusion summon, target a number of cards on the field up to the fusion materials used for his fusion summon, then destroy them. So that's really huge because Frightful Tiger usually has two fusion materials at least, which means you can destroy up to two cards, but you can technically, potentially, blow up more cards with this effect. You can only control one of them, so you can't exactly Tiger into Tiger, right? As well as this card gains 300 attack for each Fluffle monster and Frightful monster you control, as well as all other Frightful monsters, so more fusions, more power. We got Frightful Wolf. Must be fusion summoned, cannot be summoned by other ways, so that's pretty specific. Tiger doesn't have that restriction. Also, same fusion materials as the Frightful Tiger, Edge Imp Sabers, and one or more Fluffle monsters. So this card can attack a number of times each battle phase up to the number of fusion materials used for its fusion summon. So usually it'll attack twice, because that's the minimum requirement, but it can attack multiple times, so that's really deadly, even though it only has 2000 attack. As well as the boost from Tiger and whatnot will increase Wolf's attack anyways. Frightful Saber-Tooth, level 8, requires a Frightful Fusion monster and one or more Fluffle monsters, or Edge Imp Sabers. When this card's fusion summon, you get to special summon a Frightful Fusion monster from your graveyard, so if you fuse with Tiger, you just special summon back the Tiger that you just fused with, so that's pretty nice. As well as all fight for monsters you control gain 400 attack points, so that's really nice. As well as if you use 3 or more fusion material to summon this card, it cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effect. Discarding. So discarding helps out the Fabled with their effects. So we have Dark World Dealings, Twin Twister, Toy Vendor, specifically really good card, and it discards a bunch of cards. So Unicorn, the Fabled Unicorn. So this card, again, can completely stun your opponent if you have the same number of cards your opponent has. And you could technically do some Unicorn control in this deck because Twin Twister, you know, if you needed less cards in your hand, then you can just discard from your hand, then destroy your opponent's black row while you're at it. Then you'll try to have that same number of cards your opponent has. Or you could just destroy your Toy Vendor and then search out another card during your opponent's turn to actually try to, you know, mimic their hand. So you have some potential Unicorn control plays here. No specific combo in this deck, but here's the general idea of the deck. So Fluffal Dog will search out either the Fluffal Bear to search out the Toy Vendor, or search out the Fluffal Wings. So you usually want the Fluffal Wings and Toy Vendor together because they synergize together really well. So Toy Vendor will activate, discarding the Fluffal Wings, you draw a card. If it's a Fluffal monster, you get to keep it, and you get to special summon card from your hand. If otherwise, you have to discard it to the graveyard. So Fluffal Cat, for example, if you drawn it, then you're good to go. But if you drawn like Edgem Sabers, you must discard to the graveyard because it's not a Fluffal monster, but it works in the graveyard, so it's not bad. The Fabled Cerbel, if you drawn that, you'll have to discard to graveyard, but its effect will activate anyway, so you'll special summon him, so that's really good. But if it's like Grimro or Chawa, then nothing happens, so that's kind of ripping pepperoni right there. Regeki, then you just wasted that Regeki, right? Or Twin Twister, whatever spell and trap you've drawn. But if you drawn like a Toy Vendor, its effect will activate because it has been discarded by the other Toy Vendor's effect because it's not a Fluffal monster. Then you get to add a Edgem Sabers or Fluffal monster from your deck to your hand, so that's really good. Toy Vendor, its effect is not once per turn. The plan is to play like Infernity with no hand. The reason why you would do this is because you want to drop cards off of Raging, so you use Polymerization to get rid of your Fluffal and Edgem stuff, Chawa to get rid of Fabled stuff, Toy Vendor to get rid of maybe more Fabled stuff or maybe other cards. Fusion Recovery, you know, just set that then, set all your spell and traps. Then just synchro up for Raging. You can use Edgem Sabers to even top deck a card if you need to get rid of a card in your hand as well. So this is what the Fabled Fluffal deck looks like. It's a build in progress because the extra deck is questionable because there's a lot of monsters you can make and you need to know what you need to make in this deck. It's very RNG because you need to get lucky in this deck with the Toy Vendor draws and whatnot, as well as your opening hand might be good, might be bad. So it's really RNG and you gotta get lucky with this deck. Well, it is Fabled after all, and Toy Vendor makes it even more gamble based, I'd say. But it works together pretty nicely because Tiger and Wolf has the offense power, and Raging has the draw power, and Unicorn has the stun power if you play it right. Yeah, it's pretty good, I'd say, and pretty entertaining to play with. Anyways, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you guys later.